Because he felt that being a member of the board.
Well, no, I don't think that. I thought, you know,
And what is the reason that it's dangerous for her to go back? Because it must be hard.
Don't know each other. Alan Chip, they go ahead.
Yes, you don't. I know, he never said he was married. He knew he had a daughter. Someone,
Come up with
so no longer silent. But she wouldn't be able to do that. But they are. He never was.
Hey, young Alan. Hey.
I think I hit a ball in your backyard. You get a couple balls in there off the
Well, once he has
That's probably your seat there, I would imagine.
Good to see you. Thank you for having me. Hey. Hey. Nice to meet you. I'm good. Well, we had two people to have you here. Our son Jim. Good to see you. Wait for a while. Although I came from Cincinnati. I am. They were hot until last week. I don't know if you saw it. They lost it. They were overachieving.
but she wasn't original.
Incredible. Yeah. Great. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So you really follow baseball.
And that was when you consider
Are they relevant this year? I haven't come to the end. No.
not just the series. Well, he understands what I can't,
Great farms. I went to high school. My classmate was a guy named Tom Reddick. We used to call the Reds games. He's no longer there. A lot of my friends, including my brother, were drafted by the Reds. But anyway. Anderson. So, playmakers, is that what you're on the playmakers? What is that? Because I'm involved with deep back. We're trying to find a lot of the parts.
I have been doing because I was running through the schedule.
Play an active role in that as well.
Okay, okay.
Yes, yes. I know she had hit us up that we get food here, but we need to get involved with the firms about
What do you do for a living?
Do they put on 3-4 performances a year?
Probably like 8 or you were all the freaking ball. Good damn job. Good job. No, I don't know. Yes, sir. Bob Woodruff. Way overrated. Way overrated. I will call on you. I got to call on Brian. I got to mention one of the great American entertainers. Yeah, I actually had the pleasure and privilege of seeing him in concert. In fact, he was only in his 70s. Got my heart in San Francisco. That's when he closed every show. Did you ever get the chance to see him? On the right side. I passed that. You saw your email. I like your email better just like me. Okay. So I think we just go with that. Yeah. So
I have money.
if you would, thanks for our donation and mention everything. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
You know, it's like my personal. I've gotten involved.
We're going to be doing that. Yes, sir.
I want to get our club involved, right? And they have to hear.
Yes, sir.
It's not just the friends or you know, that's playmaker. I love chess. Yeah.
Trips to Latin. Every time it rains, my brother.
We went to one in Pittsburgh. Right back in the I had heard that.
You're the water expert.
Right.
Force into against the house.
state senators?
I love the guy I
I know it's public information, but also some person. As a state senator, is that you get paid enough to have that as a meeting? No, you have another job. Check, mic check one. Oh, you're rather from the band in the early '80s.
Yes.
6 kids, I think, right?
One of the deep songs was
You need some help? Give me a help. I need your education. But I won't stress you out, bro. Alright. Stress, man. We work all over the country. Probably get up. School systems primarily. School systems.
one crisis after another, but then
We have a big project. I prescribe 2 classes for my support.
we did that last night.
I prescribe 2 It's all about reaching out. It's all about feedback. This is a better answer.
She came to Minnesota.
What is it? Better.
But when I found out
Our rules are
eating so badly, started eating.
Yes, my business partner was a teacher.
Yes.
He taught.
He should be doing but she's getting all this pressure. Saying no. That's just normal. He's allowed to do it. No, I'm serious. She's got 3 lawyers. She's got
A lot of facilities.
she's not allowed to take it out. He's not going to let her off. So it's going to be
Hello, everybody. Welcome to East Chapel Hill Rotary. I will be your Sergeant at Arms today. My name is Pat Phelan, past president. Thank you. I didn't get that at home. Thank you. It's great to be here on a beautiful Carolina Friday. We're going to get the party started here by seeing if there are any guests. Are there any guests present?
She's a guest.
My daughter, Laura, who is from Birmingham, Alabama.
Welcome, Laura. Brian, you got a guest?
Yes, I have a guest today, and I want to introduce a country of mine who I've known for 67 years. This is someone I've known even longer, my brother Clive.
Welcome, Clive. Jen, did you have a guest? No, sorry. And, no guest? Visiting Rotarians. Any visiting Rotarians here today? Great. Well, welcome everybody. Let me go ahead and get the fine basket started. Put $1 in if you're here. If you're not here, don't. Appreciate that.
Keep what Marina.
And I'd like to bring Linda Sanders forward to do our invocation.
Thank you, former President Pat.
50 years.
So please join me in our invocation. Let us reflect upon the extraordinary tapestry of service and values that each Rotarian brings to communities worldwide. Let us embrace the spirit of Rotary's boundless goodwill and selflessness, United in heart and hand, we exercise the power of giving and service. From small acts of kindness to ambitious endeavors such as eradicating polio, our collective efforts transform lives, and our commitment to Rotary's core values strengthens the fabric of trust, nurtures fellowship, celebrates diversity, empowers leadership, and puts service above self. As Rotarians, we unite in our mission to create a better world. May the spirit of Rotary guide and bless our endeavors, touching lives far and wide.
Thank you so much, Linda. Thank you. Is Anzor Gachichalazza here today? It is Anzor's birthday. So if you're so inclined to reach out to Anzor, and I'm not sure if we've done this because I did miss a meeting earlier in the month, but anybody who has a July birthday, if you would please stand up. Nobody. Apparently they're all sitting in one table. Happy birthday. I was recently having a conversation with another Rotarian from another local Rotary club, and he was going on about one of his speakers at his club, and it sounded like a lot like our excellent speakers that we have every week. And he was saying that that was an annual thing for him, when it's really a weekly thing for him, or a weekly thing for us. And so it got me thinking about some of the really talented people we have in this club. It's a reason to come. The reason we come to have lunch every Friday. There are some high-profile members who are very talented, and then we have some that have had incredible careers that you may not know about. To get started with high-profile folks, D.G. Martin, who's in the house today. D.G. Martin obviously is a lawyer, author, TV personality, and radio. Interestingly enough, D.G. has his own Wikipedia page. That's how you know you're famous, when you have your own Wikipedia page. I tried to start one for my own, for myself, and I couldn't get it done. So, Jim Hebner. Jim Hebner, obviously, media mogul, our only media mogul here in Chapel Hill. Started a small radio station and made it into a media empire. We have our own Freddie Kiger, who I don't think he is here today, but Jim Hebner refers to Freddie Kiger as our Renaissance man. He knows a lot about a lot. He's a teacher for everybody, and he spends his time now employed at ESPN. He might be the last one employed at ESPN, and he's also a Civil War lecturer. Quick story about Freddie. I was at a party one time, and we were outside for some reason, and he was pointing out all the stars, naming them by name. And I'm like, well, this guy does know everything. It's just incredible. And then Dickie Baddour, I don't know if Dickie's here today, but Dickie obviously had a high-profile job at the university as athletic director. So some of our other members who've had lesser high-profile jobs, but still in the same vein. So this first person, Brian Gilliam, has given presentations to our club. And Brian is a professor of music and languages at Duke, Professor Emeritus, I think it is now. But when Brian gives a presentation, you can just feel how much music is a part of his life. You are enjoying it more than I even knew what I was enjoying. So, but Brian has had a great career at Duke as a professor, very high profile, and if you ever talk to anybody from Duke, they will absolutely know who Brian Gilliam is. And the next one here is something. I did not grow up here. I grew up in the Midwest. So many of you know the history. Is Moyer Smith here today? Yeah. There's Moyer. So Moyer is a rock star. So Moyer has had a stellar career. He started out as an athlete, obviously, played football at Carolina, but he was a coach, an administrator, and then later in his life, he was a fundraiser for the National North Carolina High Schools Athletic Association. But Moyer, when you read his bio, he's kind of like the stud in high school. We all went to high school. There was a guy walking around who was talented and everything. Moyer was that guy. When I read your bio, Moyer, I'm like, man, he was the stud. He's what everybody wanted to be like. But a very long career at the university, but also I think he taught in Albemarle, and then one other high school or college. Winston-Salem. That's it. So Moyer, congratulations on that. Last person I want to point out is Alan Swendeman. So if you read about Alan, Alan's been in government. He spent the first 30 years of his career as a lawyer, but has spent a long time in government. And rising to the ranks of like reporting to the President of the United States. I mean, as far as government duties go, Alan's been at the top. So when you're reading his bio, you think he might be a spy. And I mean, it's not impossible that he's been at the top of government for a very long period of time. Alan was Chief of Staff for the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, General Counsel for the General Services Administration, and obviously had a long law career as well. But one of his later accomplishments, I was going on the internet, and this just makes me feel a little small, but in 2018, President Trump announced Alan as a nominee for the Peace Corps Deputy Director, which I think, I'm not sure how he got involved with the Peace Corps, but they were probably just looking for good people at the time. And do you still hold that role, Alan?
No, I asked that my name be withdrawn when my wife passed away.
Okay. But high profile job in the government. If you have any questions, whether you're being followed or if your identification has been stolen, I would call Alan because he would know. But so that's really where I stop as far as being Sergeant at Arms. Cliff.
Just last week, y'all know how proud I am that I got out of doing alive. Just last week, one of the travel magazines named it the ugliest town in North Carolina.
Is that right? Yeah. And you were born and bred Dunn, North Carolina, and it's one of the ugliest cities in North Carolina.
Maybe I should use that as a come on, you know.
Yeah.
It wasn't one of them, it was the.
That's probably going to be a good bumper sticker for the city of Dunn, huh? Cliff, it got a lot uglier when you left. Let's just say that. That's it. So I have a dual role today. I am your Sergeant at Arms, and you all can applaud because that's over. But I'm also in charge of the inductions. We're going to induct 3 new members today. Two new members today. I was close. So if I can have the inductees and the inductors come on up.
Thanks for staying with You want the sponsors up there too?
The sponsors to come up as well. That would be wonderful.
You want all 3, right? Yes. Go for it.
Yeah?
Peggy.
Peggy.
Well, it looks like Gardner's doing it.
Fellow Rotarians, it is our duty from time to time as a Rotary Club to add new members so that we may not only increase our usefulness and influence as a club, but also to extend the spirit of Rotary through our community and indeed our world. We welcome to our ranks and admit to membership Kaiser and Libby. Kaiser and Libby, Rotary is an international organization of business and professional organization with more than 33,000 Rotary clubs in over 200 countries. I wish to impress upon you that you have been admitted not only to East Chapel Hill Rotary Club, but to a worldwide association of over 1.3 million like-minded business and professional leaders. With the pin you're about to receive, you're entitled to travel the world, find a Rotary Club within easy distance, and be warmly welcomed by fellow Rotarians. Even though the language may be different, the food unusual, and location far from home. The honor and privilege of Rotary membership also carries with it duties and obligations. You'll be expected to attend our club's meetings weekly, to enthusiastically perform your share of club service with our teacher supply store, youth services, monthly family house dinners, bike night, Guatemala dental service, and other causes. And also to actively participate in our fellowship activities like the holiday party, Valentine lunch, steak night, and pop-up events. Our goal in Rotary is to encourage and foster the development of fellowship as an opportunity for service. Second, high ethical standards in business and professions. Third, dignifying each Rotarian with an opportunity to serve society. And fourth, the advancement of international understanding, goodwill, and peace through a world of people united in the ideal of service and fellowship. Rotary challenges you to live by the four-way test in all you say and do. First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? And fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? Do you accept this challenge?
I certainly do.
All right. Then I please ask all members to rise. Libby and Kaiser, in the name of Rotary Club of East Chapel Hill, it is now my honor and privilege to formally admit you to membership in our club and have your sponsors affix the pin to your lapel.
No lapel.
No lapel. Sorry. Okay. We can have you say a few words about yourself just for about a minute.
Sure.
Folks, I am absolutely honored and delighted to become a member of an organization that has so many just outstanding people in it. I moved here to Chapel Hill in 2016, threw myself into this idea of forming bonds with a community, was vexed by the onset of the pandemic, like so many of you were, so I have a lot of pent-up demand for this. I really do, with Robert Putnam, believe that there is a crisis in America. There is just not enough social bonding. I think that we all need to de-isolate ourselves, and I want to be part of that. No one has been more instrumental in this than Brian Phillips, my sponsor, who has modeled the kind of behavior that draws me to an organization like this with his deep intellectual thirst, his just companionability, and his great generosity. So I want to, if I can live up to that, I will be very fulfilled. And thank you so much for having me as a member of this august organization.
I'm Libby Skull, and I was born in Texas, but I was raised in West Virginia, and we lived there until we moved here 5 years ago. We have 5 children. We have 10 grandchildren. I went to Marietta College and then to the University of Texas for a master's in library science. I've been all kinds of librarians. I've been public, I've been rehabilitation librarian, I've been school librarian was mostly my career. but my most unusual job was being the institutions librarian for the state of West Virginia. And that included serving the prisons and mental hospitals throughout the state and the juvenile correction facilities as well. I started coming to Rotary with Gardner in February and was so impressed with the mission and the motto and the fabulous speakers and just the general friendliness of everybody here. So thank you for including me. I'm really proud to be a new member.
Thank you all and welcome. If you get a chance on the way out to welcome both of the new members, that would be great. Shake their hand. So I serve up President Mike.
Thank you, great job, Pat. And we all know new members of the lifeblood of our club, so welcome, welcome, welcome. Pat, one thing, I was really disappointed when you didn't mention that I was the fastest third grader in Bishopville School. I'm disappointed that didn't get brought up in the, the recognition of everybody. I mean, I'm pretty proud of that. I mean, I had short legs then. I grew. We got a couple quick announcements before we get into another wonderful program. I tell you, we're just killing it starting out my year with programs. Brian Gillen, you had a couple things you wanted to.
Yeah, come on. Okay. Rotary made a very generous donation to empowerment, musical empowerment in Chapel Hill, and the head of Empowerment Music wrote a little thank you note. I wanted to read it. Thank you 1,000,000 harmonious times for your fantastic donation to music empowerment. Because of your support, we can provide free weekly music lessons, instruments, and mentorship to over 200 economically disadvantaged children here in Chapel Hill and Carrboro by the end of 2023. So here's to the East Chapel Hill Rotary Club for exemplifying high-impact philanthropy. Thank you for helping us make the world a more melodious and harmonious place for our little maestros. Thank you.
Dr. Joe, you have. Got to use this. Okay. You got to enunciate for us.
Okay. All right. Last night was Sekou House, or they say Family House now, and we had a huge crowd. For the first time, we almost ran out of food. And the only reason we didn't run out of food, well, there were several reasons. One is that Erica Brana, at the last minute, brought a chicken casserole by. And so we had something unusual happen after, and I'm sorry, the Wounded Warrior leader is not here, but we had two people ask for recipes last night. Two people, not one. One, they wanted Jim Robles dressing for his salad, which I told him I'd get him, and the others for Erica's chicken casserole that she had her little girls make right before she brought it. So we had a fabulous time. Diane Smith said it's the first time she's ever run out of desserts, which is true. And we actually ate 2 cakes that were left over from somebody else. The mac and cheese that Marvin bought at Costco, although someone has previously asked for that. Oh, okay. People sometimes ask for mac and cheese. But anyway, I just wanted to let you know how excited the people were. They ran out of food last night, and the people started lining up at 5:45. The other thing I'm going to say, which is a little bit more troubling, is that there was no one, and I'm going to excuse Erica from this, under 60 helping out last night. All right, how many people in here are under 60? Hands up, hands up. Okay, well get ready, folks, because the challenge is going to be, and we'll decide when, and I think Erica may have to lead this effort, I hadn't told you about this. But we're gonna have a family house dinner with only 60 and under people there. And I may attend, even though I don't fit that category.
Thank you. Wonderful group. If you haven't participated in this, even if you're over 60, I highly encourage it. It's a lot of fun. As I always say, if you think you have problems, when you leave there, you know you won't. Okay? A couple quick housekeeping things. We have our 19th annual Teacher Supply Store coming up August 21st and 22nd. Tim and Jim are all on that. There'll be a sign-up sheet coming out soon. Really looking forward to that again. And on that note, I'm going to bring up Mr. Alan Young to introduce what I think will be another great speaker.
Good afternoon. We are fortunate at East Chapel Hill Rotary to welcome a wide range of distinguished speakers. Speakers who engage us, teach us, and often challenge us, perhaps with a different perspective, or perhaps by their dedication, excellence, or impact. So much so that I often find myself thinking, such and such speaker is doing X to help the world. What am I doing? Can I do more? I always ask that question when I'm in the presence of Senator Greg Meyer. Born in Cleveland, Ohio, to parents who are social workers, Greg developed an early passion for education and public service that brought him to Chapel Hill, Carver City Schools, and then to the North Carolina General Assembly. First as a House member, and now as our state senator. He's received lots of awards over the course of his tenure for a wide range of contributions. But the most prestigious, for sure, is his victory in a Twinkie eating contest. In addition to politics, Senator Meyer serves on the board of Playmakers and actively supports numerous organizations, and he enjoys time with his wife, Kim, and their blended family of 6 that he refers to fondly, I think, as his Brady Bunch. I'd hoped to give you, Greg, a box of Twinkies, both to welcome you, but also to see you do your stuff. But I went by Harris Teeter, and the whole shelf was gone. And I said, where are the Twinkies? And they said, well, how can you be out of Twinkies? They said, well, just a few minutes ago, this guy came in, and he bought them all. I said, who was he? They said, well, he was tall, about yay tall, dark hair, and looked kind of like that face that was up there. I said, do you know who that was? And they said, yeah, he's the Twinkie champion. Please join me in welcome our Twinkie champion and state senator.
I've never told a more august group that I was a Twinkie eating champion. Y'all are a special audience. It's great to be back with you. I'm so deeply appreciative of everything that you do for this community. It was amazing for me just to hear a moment ago that it's going to be the 19th annual Teacher Supply Store. I was at the first one back when I was working for the school system. I can't believe it's been 19 years. Thank you for continuing that tradition. And thank you as well for the contribution that you have recently made to help the Blue Ribbon Mentor Advocate Program. Lorenzo has been mentoring and trying to recruit some of you to be a mentor in that program. The 16 years that I spent running that program, there was every single day I loved going to work. Never had a day where I got up and didn't want to go. That is not true in the North Carolina General Assembly. But I think that Blue Ribbon, among many amazing organizations in this community, and you support a ton, Blue Ribbon stands out as one that has shown over the course of 25 or so years now that it does a really special job of stitching together the social fabric of this community. Because it tries to find folks who otherwise likely wouldn't know each other at all. Give them an opportunity to build a truly deep and long-lasting relationship in ways that pay off far beyond the stated goal of just making sure that those kids graduate from high school and go to college. Because when you're a mentor like Lorenzo, you and your family are benefiting from what you're learning, and the community just gets stronger when people from different races, different classes, different sides of town, immigrant families with people who have lived here forever, when you build those relationships. And what I see now, and it's been 10 years since I left running that program, but what I see now is I see the students that I worked with and their families, and I see their mentors, and the students that I had, some of them are now approaching 40, and they're still in touch with their mentors. They still have relationships between their parents, the students' parents, and the mentors. They have some situations where the student might work for the mentor in the same industry as the mentor. I had students who volunteered on my campaign last year because they were like, "You're running, we're in, we're gonna help you." And so it's just such a great piece of not just helping the schools, but helping the community, become what community is. So thank you for your contribution to the scholarship fund, and I do hope that Lorenzo's able to convince more of you to become mentors, and he can tell you more about what the experience has been like for him and his wife and his family. 10 years ago, which might have been the last time that I was here, I think Ellen was asking me, I think the last time I was here to talk to you was when I was very new in my role as a state house member. 10 years ago, I ran for the North Carolina General Assembly because I was concerned about what was happening in North Carolina and our policy around public schools. And I went to the legislature thinking I would be a pretty good one-trick pony of just the person who was working in the schools would be the person who was legislating policy on the schools. And it turns out that I'm really bad at being a one-trick pony because I ended up, instead of being a specialist, I ended up being a generalist. I've worked on every major issue that there is in the legislature. I've served on every committee except for the banking committee. I'm happy to get assigned to that next year. We'll see what they do. And I love it. I love working on all the issues. And here's the reason why, and this is the way I want to frame what I want to talk to you about, and I'll take questions for most of the time we have together, but it's all connected. There's no piece of policy that we work on in the North Carolina General Assembly that is disconnected from the other pieces of policy that we work on. And we are in a place in North Carolina's history where I'm worried about where we're going to go, in part because I'm not sure that we have the leadership that we need right now to make the complex decisions that we're going to have to make, of how all of the things that we want to do are connected, and it's going to be hard to get them all right. And it's going to take tremendous leadership over the next decade. I recently learned an interesting history lesson, and there's some serious historians in the room here, so when I tell you this history lesson, if I'm wrong, somebody like D.G. Martin can certainly correct me. But I've been thinking a lot over the last 2 years about the name that we all fondly have for this state that we love, of North Carolina being the beacon of the South. And I thought that name, I thought the beacon, that term of North Carolina is the beacon of the South, I had always heard or assumed or thought that Terry Sanford coined that term. And I asked my friend Mark Simpson-Voss, who's the executive editor at UNC Press, who you should have come talk to you because he'd be another great person. I knew he would know. So was it Mark Sanford? Not Mark Sanford. Terry Sanford. Was it Terry Sanford? Because he was the editor of the North Carolina Encyclopedia. So if anybody would know, he would know. And he said, no, I don't think it was. Because Sanford always attributed it to Edward K. Graham. And so that goes back. If that's true, if it was Graham, Frank Porter Graham's dad, if it was Graham, he was the president of the university in the 1910s. That puts us at over 100 years of North Carolina being the beacon of the South. What will it mean for us to be the beacon of the South for another 100 years? Well, we're about to go through the most significant economic transition that this state has had since the fall of tobacco. And I want to explain to you what that economic transition looks like and how it's connected to all the other things that we have to get right, and why the General Assembly needs to do its job if we're going to take advantage of this. The transition that's going to hit us is all around the transition that is coming to us because of the way that economic opportunity and climate change imperative are coming together right here in the state of North Carolina. The biggest thing that we've done in the 10 years I've been in the legislature was to pass a bill 2 years ago that sets us on a path to a carbon neutral energy future. And here's what's going to happen because of that bill and a couple other things. North Carolina is going to become the largest producer of offshore wind electricity on the East Coast. The federal government has already leased 2 huge swaths of the ocean to producers who will build massive offshore wind facilities with wind turbines that are taller than the tallest building in Raleigh. And those offshore wind facilities will generate at least 30% of the electricity that we use in North Carolina. Those turbines, the cables that connect them, the transmission lines that go from the coast to the Piedmont, all of that is going to be manufactured in Eastern North Carolina. Areas that have been destitute since the fall of tobacco will all of a sudden have major manufacturing opportunities. But when the wind blows and those turbines turn and the energy comes from the east to the west, there's another challenge that also presents another economic opportunity for us, which is, if you all are coastal people, you know that the wind tends to blow most in the evening through the night. So you're generating electricity at a time when you don't actually need to consume the majority of the electricity. So what do you do with that wind electricity? You store it. Now, if you pay attention to what's happening with electricity right now, you know that that's one of the biggest challenges with moving to a clean energy future, is that we don't have a lot of storage opportunities. And I didn't understand how that wind infrastructure and solar that will also be built all across Eastern North Carolina was linked to the manufacturing that's going to transform the Piedmont, which is electric vehicle and electric battery infrastructure. You know about the VinFast plant, you know about the Toyota battery plant. We are going to produce a huge portion of America's consumption of electric vehicles, their batteries, and the chips like Wolfspeed that run those electric vehicles. Well, I was at an event where President Biden and Governor Cooper were talking about all of this, but it wasn't those two esteemed individuals who helped me understand how this was all going to connect. It was the CEO of Volvo Trucks, whose headquarters are in Greensboro. And I was asking him about, he said that their goal was to be the #1 producer of electric trucks. And I was asking him what that looked like, and I thought that he was talking about long-haul trucks. And he said, no, it's really hard to do electric long-haul trucks. He said, the electric trucks that we're gonna produce are the electric trucks that deliver your beer or that pick up your trash. He said, those are ideal models for electric trucks because just like in your hybrid car, every time that you stop, you put energy through your braking back into your battery. He said, so a truck that starts and stops all day long like a garbage truck is an ideal truck to have become an electric truck. He said, my problem is I have to have cheap electricity that will go into that truck's battery at the beginning of the day so that it has enough electricity in its battery and with its stopping action to make it through the whole day. And he said, that's our biggest challenge is that right now, we don't have the right electric infrastructure to be able to make that type of fleet conversion in North Carolina. And I said, well, did you know about the offshore wind that's coming? And he did not. And it made him so happy because he said, well, I'm gonna produce the trucks that have the batteries that store all that energy that comes from the wind every night from the coast. That's pretty smart. So, that's amazing in and of itself. Electric and solar power stored in your car's batteries, electric truck batteries, other batteries that we're manufacturing right here. They're gonna get us off of carbon, it's gonna address climate change, and we're gonna make tons of money by manufacturing these, and we're gonna employ people in doing it. So then, what does that mean about all the other policies that we have? Well, it means we're gonna have to educate people to do those jobs. It means we're going to have housing in the places where those growth opportunities are, where we have housing challenges right now. It means that we're going to have people who are trained in the technical aspects of being electricians and welders and all of those types of things that run that infrastructure. It means that we're going to have to think about our transportation, of how do we change the way that we use roads, trains, bus rapid transit, etc., to move people to where they need to go. All of this are things that are a puzzle that we're going to have to figure out in the General Assembly together. And the one policy that actually ties them all is the one that I've never had any idea I'd get into in Raleigh, and ended up being the one that fascinates me the most. It's tax policy. It takes money to do what the state does. And in order to do that, we have to figure out a fair way to tax people and businesses to make sure that you have the money that's required to do all of those things that we want to do. And to use that tax system to stimulate good business growth, and in some ways to try and stop other types of business from happening. And right now, where we are this session in the General Assembly, is we are at a complete standstill because there is a huge battle going on behind closed doors, not between Democrats and Republicans, but between Republicans and Republicans, the Senate Republicans and the House Republicans, over tax policy. See, North Carolina has been running a surplus over the last 5 years, including the years in the pandemic, that is unprecedented for our state and almost for any other. This last fiscal year, we closed the year with $3 billion unappropriated already in the bank. So unappropriated meaning, I'm not talking about a rainy day fund, I'm not talking about long-term investment funds, I'm talking about $3 billion already in the bank that we don't have set aside for anything. And then we ran a $3 billion surplus on top of that. That's $6 billion unappropriated in a $30 billion state budget. And our fiscal experts told us that out of that $3 billion that we had that was surplus in this last year, that we could expect to have $2 billion of that coming in recurring dollars every year going forward. That's real money that we could use for investments in things like our schools that need about $13 billion worth of repairs, or into our water and sewer systems that need about $10 billion worth of repairs. But my Senate Republican colleagues put forward a tax proposal that keeps our revenue at $30 billion from now for the next 10 years. They completely eliminate the corporate income tax, they cut the individual income tax in half, and they put our government at a fixed revenue rate for 10 years, even though this state will grow in population by 10 to 15% over the next 10 years. The House Republicans aren't willing to go that far. They're willing to cut the taxes some, but they're not willing to go that far. And so we're stalled in budget negotiations. Budget should have gone into place on July 1st, but we don't have a budget yet because the Senate Republicans have put that proposal out there. The House Republicans haven't agreed to it. And here's the very specific nitty-gritty reason why, and why legislating comes down to individuals sometimes. The Senate budget, because of the population growth, the Senate budget gets into a structural deficit. You can't have the same $30 billion right now 10 years from now. You end up in a structural deficit. And among the House Republicans, there's 2 Republicans. Their names are Julia Howard and Mitch Setzer, who are fiscal hawks, and they won't vote for a budget that has a structural deficit in it. I've seen them vote against budgets when I was in the House. And so they are holding up the negotiations until there's some agreement of how to get the budget done. Now, you might have seen in the news the last couple days that what is currently under negotiation to fill that budget hole is not lowering the income tax cap, it's legalizing casinos in North Carolina. It's putting casinos, full Cherokee-style casinos in 4 other counties in the state, and probably also legalizing video lottery terminals like the kind you see in the little jackpot sweepstakes places with the dark windows in front of them, but allowing those to be in every gas station, every restaurant, every bar, everywhere in the state. That's their answer for how they want to close their budget deficit. We have so much potential in North Carolina. to lead on clean energy, to lead on education the way we always have, to be a place where people want to continue to move. But we can't do it if we starve ourselves with bad tax policy. And so there's no way I'm going to vote for whatever compromise budget they come out with if they continue down this path with these massive tax cuts and starving our state when we need so much for our schools, for our healthcare system, et cetera. But I hope that you'll see, by thinking about the potential that's there with the economic transformation, to be the beacon of the South again, and why we have to get it right in the General Assembly. I'd be happy to take any questions you have about economic policy, about schools, about politics, about anything. Brian Keeler, go ahead.
Two questions. Tell me, does it feel like you jumped from the frying pan into the fire? What's the difference between being in both houses? What have you become?
The Senate is a smaller chamber with bigger egos. And I'm glad you laughed, because I made that joke on the floor of the Senate and nobody laughed. But there's three differences. That really is true. Like, it's astounding to me. I'm like, holy cow, these people are arrogant. Like, wow, it really is a cultural difference. The other is that the House is kind of like the wild, wild west when it comes to how debate goes. We once debated a bill that was proposing that schools would have to serve kids North Carolina muscadine grape juice at lunch. That was a serious bill. We debated that bill in the House for 3 hours. The Senate refuses to hear that bill because, like, this is dumb. We're not doing this. So the Senate is just way more controlled. The House is the wild, wild west where, like, you never know what's going to happen. And in the Senate, you always know what's going to happen. The third difference is the biggest, the most important, the one that Mike and I talked about. It's a bigger district. I used to serve 80,000 people. Now I serve 220,000 people. I have served Northern Orange County and Caswell County, and I was friendly to Chapel Hill because I've worked here for so long, but now I represent all of Chapel Hill, and I also represent Person County. And so it's more constituent services, it's spending more time in other parts of the district, and with the same number of staff and the same amount of pay. So that's the other difference. Yes?
Thanks for the overview of the energy scene. It looks pretty encouraging. Right now we have a monopoly, Duke Energy, and unless you go off the grid, you have no choice. And a lot of people have no choice. Meanwhile, Duke Energy has had a lot of raises approved over the past year in their tariff, and maybe 2 years. And I thought the raise was initially because of the war in Ukraine and the increase in costs. But I don't understand why there's this continual why there's a set of increases that was approved by the Assembly, and what's being done about it. It's pretty regressive.
So I can blame a lot of things on the North Carolina General Assembly, but I can't blame the increases in Duke power rates on the General Assembly, because the General Assembly doesn't set electricity rates in North Carolina. This is the kind of thing that when I thought I'd be a one-trick pony, I had no idea that later I would understand all these things about how our electricity rates set. But the most important governmental body that you've likely never heard of in North Carolina is the Public Utilities Commission. And the Public Utilities Commission is made up of appointed individuals. And at this point, Governor Cooper has the majority of appointees on the commission. And it's the commission's role to hear rate requests from all types of power providers, so that would include electricity and gas, and to determine what are the rates that consumers will pay. Now, the laws that govern how they make their decisions and that set up Duke's monopoly in most of North Carolina, as well as set up the framework for our electric co-ops in the area that Duke doesn't serve, that is all governed by the North Carolina General Assembly. And I've proposed bills and supported bills that would make some pretty big changes to that, although I do not believe that the best move for us would be to go to a deregulated electricity market. What I do believe is that when you have a regulated electricity monopoly like Duke Power, that they should actually be regulated. See, they're guaranteed an 8.5% profit. That's part of them having the monopoly, is getting that guarantee. I own a small business. I do consulting. I would like to have a guaranteed 8.5% profit. You only get that when you're a government-regulated monopoly. So in exchange for that, we should be able to put some pretty tight controls on them. And I do not think that the Public Utilities Commission, including, and I pointed out, including Governor Cooper's appointees to that commission, I don't think they've been aggressive enough in regulating Duke, including keeping the rates as low as they could. But there's other stuff that we should require of our monopoly power provider. So here's one example. The Roanoke Electric Co-op. So this is in Eastern North Carolina, and our rural electric co-ops, it goes all the way back to electrification. They were the organizations that were stood up to serve rural America that the big corporate power giants wouldn't. And the Roanoke Co-op has an amazing program where they do on-bill financing for energy efficiency updates for people's homes. So you're a poor, rural family, and your air conditioning system goes out. Instead of you having to take a high interest loan from wherever you can get it to be able to repair your air conditioning, the co-op itself will provide you with the financing to get a new HVAC system and put in insulation and give you window repairs and all the things you need to do to have a more energy efficient home. And then you pay it back on a monthly fee on your electricity bill. Except here's the magic of it. Your electricity bill still goes down because they just made your home more energy efficient and they put in a highly energy efficient appliance. And so you're paying less even with the on-bill financing than you were before. They also put a smart meter in your home and connect you to the internet and make sure you have Wi-Fi so that they can use the smart meter to throttle up and down their electric transmission so that they get overall cost savings from being able to have a more wired system. That's brilliant. It benefits everyone. We should require Duke to do that for all of their folks, because think of every person that you know in Chapel Hill right now who can't afford to upgrade their air conditioning, but they could if they did this. And with the incentives that are coming from the federal government that are going to give pretty much all of us about a 40% rebate on any energy efficient appliances we do in the next 10 years, we require Duke to do that, we could create a more energy efficient North Carolina for everybody. So I'm no fan of Duke Energies. I think they could do a lot better.
To follow up on Duke Energy, I'm from Person County, and we have 3 coal burning plants there. And you know when they burn that coal, what happens to it? It turns ash. They let it in the railroad car and they go dump it in holding areas by our rivers and pollute our rivers and streams. South Carolina sued the heck out of them, got lots of money. Why are we not getting some recompensation for all the pollution that the biggest polluter in this state is doing?
So I'm fascinated by how much more.
Greg, would you repeat the question?
Yeah, I can. So Mike's talking about, he's from Person County. Person County has 3 of Duke's largest electric producing power plants. They're coal burning power plants. So Duke right now gets 85% plus of its energy from a combination of coal and nuclear. And it depends how much on what day. They get the rest of that from renewables, but 85% still allowed. And we could talk about whether nuclear is renewable or not. That's an interesting conversation in and of itself. But to the point about coal, so the byproduct of coal power is coal ash. And if you remember a few years ago, we had a big scandal because coal ash spilled into the Dan River because Duke put it into a pit next to the river, which doesn't seem like a very good decision. I was new to the legislature at the time. Dan River runs along Caswell County. This does actually impact some of my constituents. And what happened was that our legislature basically said to Duke, well, you got to move the coal ash away from the rivers and water sources, and so you're going to have to put it into trucks and move it somewhere else. But we'll let you bill the consumers for the costs of moving it. Whereas in South Carolina, when Duke got sued, the legislature said, no, you can't bill the consumers for this. You got to move the coal ash, and you got to pay for it. South Carolina also made an interesting move just this year that's different than what North Carolina has chosen to do, which is there was a U.S. Supreme Court lawsuit about water, about the, what do you call it, like marshland water, like wetlands. Thank you. That's the word I'm looking for. About wetlands. And the Supreme Court ruling dramatically restricted protections of wetlands. So South Carolina quickly put in place a huge expansion of their state protection of wetlands. Because South Carolina recognized that if we have a hurricane that comes through and we don't have wetlands, then what we get is flooding. And we'd rather protect the wetlands and not have the flooding and have to pay for that. What did my colleagues do in the General Assembly? The Republicans passed 3 bills that made us compliant with the federal definition of wetlands, meaning we couldn't do something like South Carolina did. We only have the federally restricted ones that the Supreme Court just pulled back so far. South Carolina will be more resilient to hurricanes than North Carolina will forevermore if we build on those wetlands. So, I'm getting long-winded on the question, but to the question about coal ash and Duke, all of this, of the way that we let Duke move on coal ash, the way we let them move on that, the Utilities Commission sets the rates, but all of the structure is set by the General Assembly, and there is no corporate entity in North Carolina that gets more of what it wants from the General Assembly than Duke Power does. And it's right, that's why. And if you want to change that, you have to change who has power in the General Assembly.
Look at who donates to the campaigns.
That's
right.
right.
The people that are getting voted in.
That's
all
right.
you need to do.
And Duke does it not just with their PAC, which is publicly disclosed donations. Duke makes huge dark money investments.
So they're getting all kind of PACs.
Yeah. Yep.
A few months ago, we were starting to get times about the extent to which rural hospitals are being given maternity wards. And we talked about bringing jobs to new manufacturing jobs to places that need. There's really 2 parts to it. One is, how are you going to address challenges like that to the extent that you need to bring in outside workers? And it also, for those who are local already, it seems like what a manufacturing job is has really changed. Because I was young, educational requirements are a bit more challenging. How are we going to address those?
So the question was twofold. One is a question of how are we going to address the shortage of healthcare access in rural areas, and 2, how are we going to train people for the type of advanced manufacturing that's required today? I'm fairly optimistic about both of those things, except we have a couple hurdles to get over. So on healthcare, we're on the verge of expanding Medicaid. Whenever we do pass a budget this year, as bad as the budget is, we've got an agreement that we will expand Medicaid, which is the single biggest thing we can do, not just for the healthcare of North Carolinians, but for our economy. It's actually a bigger deal than the energy transmission and the electric vehicle production I'm talking about. Here's a little bit of the numbers why. We expand Medicaid in North Carolina. It'll give about 700,000 North Carolinians health care. It'll give a couple 100,000 folks access to mental health care. It includes about 150,000 veterans. That's all fantastic. And those are working people, right? This isn't healthcare for the poorest people who aren't working. These are working people who don't have healthcare through their jobs and can't afford to buy it on the market. That's who gets the healthcare. But here's the economic impact. We already pay the taxes to the federal government. We get back from the federal government $550 million a month for healthcare. A month. It's been 10 years we could have had that money. We'll finally start getting that money. We will be able to make the largest investments in healthcare expansion that North Carolina has ever seen. We'll be able to reduce your wait time in emergency rooms. We'll be able to increase access to healthcare in rural areas. We'll have the money to do all kinds of things. The governor has a proposal for $1 billion investment in mental health care. We're going to do big things on healthcare. The one hurdle we're going to have to get over is we don't have enough providers. We're not anywhere close to the enough providers. And there's probably a bunch of you in here who work in medical and you understand that. And so what we're going to have to do next is we're going to have to figure out some ambitious way to get more people to go into the field, to pay for them to be trained, and to do something like a loan forgiveness program so that for the rural hospitals you're asking about, if they'll make the commitment to go work at a rural hospital in the maternity ward, that we'll forgive their medical school debt. But it's going to take us a few years to catch up, to be able to train the people to meet that potential, but at least we're on the upswing rather than being in the situation we've been for the last 10 years. On skilled manufacturing, you should have J.B. Buxton come in here and talk to you from Durham Tech. our community colleges are all over the skilled manufacturing thing. Like, I have no doubts whatsoever that we have the capacity to train people for the type of manufacturing jobs that are here. It's amazing what they do at Durham Tech already to train people in biotech manufacturing. If you talk to the folks from Alamance and Guilford, what they do to train people in avionics for the Honda Jet program, like our community colleges are still unmatched. The General Assembly where has been pretty hostile to the UNC system and to K-12, but pretty good to the community college system, and we're gonna be good on workforce development.
So your very laudable commitment to the green energy transition has already taken you into the rough and tumble of tax policy. It may also take you into foreign policy.
Yeah.
If you consider what's happened in Virginia or in Michigan, every time an automaker, for example, has wanted to partner with a Chinese battery manufacturer, and China, as you know, controls about 70% of the total supply chain in storage, right? This is going to become an issue here. What is the temperature right now in the state Senate when it comes to, are they ready to pounce on the China angle of anything you do either with wind and solar, offshore wind, solar, or with battery storage?
So for the most part, the General Assembly stays out of foreign policy matters. But you do have to pay attention in the way that you're asking about it. And there are two minds in the General Assembly about China, and I don't think this is actually partisan. Like, there's a lot of things I've talked about today where I've kind of hinted or been explicit about the way it's partisan. But on China, I don't actually think it's a major partisan divide. There are people in both parties who feel like let's do what makes us money and we need to figure out the economic opportunities. And there are people in both parties who are fairly hostile towards any type of relationship with China. Luckily, we don't have to make most of those decisions most of the policy decisions, because most of that is federal. What I would say is that I know that our economic development partnership is very active in trying to recruit international companies to place businesses here in North Carolina. That's how you end up with a VinFast deal coming here. But that's to say international and not specifically China. So if you really want an in-depth answer, you probably got to get somebody from the Economic Development Partnership to talk specifically about the China end.
Got time for one more.
Okay. Who should I take?
Yeah, how are the states like Florida, Texas that don't have state income taxes, how are they able to function?
Sales tax. So if you, I think Florida sales tax, it's like 10%.
That much more than ours?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. And so in tax policy, when you tax people and you make revenue based on sales tax, or when you make it off of a consumption tax on something like gambling, that's what we call a regressive tax. What you know in that situation is that the poorest people are going to pay a larger percentage of their income towards the tax base than if you have an income-based tax or a tax that emphasizes other types of revenue sources that come from businesses or from people's wealth. You probably have to have a balance of all those taxes. There's good reasons for sales taxes. There's good ways to use sales taxes to incentivize some things and to punish other types of consumption. But you sure as heck shouldn't pay 10% when you go to the grocery store. And you shouldn't go broke from going to the hospital. And you shouldn't have a state government that promises you education and then doesn't raise enough money to give you a school building and a teacher. There's some stuff on fiscal policy that you just have to get right for the people that you serve. And out of all of the social stuff that happens in the media, I wish that they would talk 1/4 of what the media talks about on social issues on tax policy. Because it really is the thing that impacts every other piece and that you have to get right. Thank you for having me here.
Right. Everybody have a great weekend. Thank you for coming. Same bat time, same bat station next week. Have a good weekend, y'all.
Thank you. Good. Ask him about the public school bill.
It's a big issue.
I want to know what killed.
So there's actually a controversial proposal right now to build a major lithium mine manufacturing gas around. So,
we didn't get it. I didn't know you guys had that either. I couldn't
we actually have enough in Gaston County that we could mine it here almost to manufacturing. Oh, really? So you've heard about it. Yeah. What do you think we should do? Kelly.
Were you surprised that he? Yes.
I don't know that they know how much, and I think that's part of the dilemma of how do you make that decision of is that the right thing to do to put that plant there. I mean, once they mine it, then they'll also manufacture it, right? Because that'll be that's the supply chain. If you're gonna manufacture the batteries in where's the Toyota plant going? It's going in Randolph County. But you're going to get the lithium from Gaston County. That's only about 70 miles. So your entire chain, the supply chain, is going to be right there.
I said you almost helped it.
Right to
Except you